Once upon a time, in the bustling heart of San Francisco, there lived a man who seemed to have it all. Ethan Osborne, the CEO of Caldwell Technologies, was the embodiment of success. The tech firm he had founded had grown into one of the most influential in the industry. From the outside, his life appeared perfect. He lived in a luxurious penthouse that offered panoramic views of the Golden Gate Bridge, drove the finest cars, and had the most beautiful woman by his side, his wife, Sarah Osborne. Together, they were the golden couple, admired by all who knew them. But behind closed doors, beneath the facade of wealth and success, was a different story, a story of insecurities, betrayal, and a journey that would strip Ethan of everything he held dear. Sarah Osborne wasn't just Ethan's wife. She was a woman of substance, a woman who had built her life from the ground up. Before marrying Ethan, Sarah was a respected sheriff in their town, known for her strength, intelligence, and unshakable sense of justice. She had earned the admiration of everyone who crossed her path, citizens, colleagues, and even criminals, who feared her because of her fierce dedication to law and order. Ethan, who had always admired strong women, was captivated by Sarah from the moment they met. Her courage, her ability to stand her ground in a male-dominated world, and her beauty were qualities that drew him in. To Ethan, Sarah wasn't just a wife. She was a symbol of everything he aspired to: be strong, independent, and admired. He was proud to show her off to his friends and colleagues, always boasting about how lucky he was to have a woman like her by his side. But as time went on, that pride began to turn into something darker. The very qualities that had once attracted Ethan to Sarah, her intelligence, her strength, and her independence, began to make him feel insecure. Everywhere they went, Sarah was surrounded by men. They admired her not only for her beauty, but also for her accomplishments as a sheriff. Ethan tried to ignore it at first, but the discomfort grew within him, a gnawing feeling that he couldn't shake. He feared that someone else might steal her away from him, especially in her line of work, where she was constantly in the public eye. Despite Sarah never giving him any reason to doubt her loyalty, Ethan's insecurities began to fester. He couldn't bear the thought of losing her to someone else. So, he began to subtly push her toward leaving her job. He promised her that she wouldn't need to work anymore, that he could take care of everything. In his mind, this was the solution to his fears. He would have her to himself, and no one could threaten their relationship. One evening, after a quiet dinner in their penthouse, Ethan made his move. He had been stewing on the idea for weeks, and now, he felt ready to confront Sarah with his proposal. "Sarah," he said, his voice calm but laced with an undercurrent of urgency, "I'm thinking. Maybe it's time you considered leaving your job. You don't need to work anymore. I can take care of everything. We can start a family, and I can provide for us." Sarah was taken aback. She had always been passionate about her career, and to her, being a sheriff wasn't just a job, it was her calling. "Leave my job?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Ethan, I love my job. Being a sheriff means everything to me." "I know you do, honey," Ethan replied, trying to keep his tone soothing. "But we don't need the stress anymore. You've worked so hard, and now that we're married, you don't have to. I can pay you the same salary you're earning now, and you can stay home. You can take care of the house, focus on starting a family, and leave all the worries to me." It was an argument Sarah couldn't easily dismiss. She had worked her way up through the ranks of the police force, earning the respect of her colleagues and the people she served. She had always prided herself on her independence, and yet, there was a part of her that wanted to make Ethan happy. After many sleepless nights of weighing her options, Sarah finally agreed. She handed in her resignation, hung up her badge, and transitioned into the role of a full-time housewife. At first, Sarah embraced her new life. She found joy in taking care of their home, trying new recipes, decorating, and enjoying more quality time with Ethan. They talked about their future together, making plans to start a family, travel the world, and build a life they both dreamed of. Ethan seemed genuinely happy that she was at home, and for a while, Sarah believed she had made the right decision. But as the months passed, something changed. Ethan, who had once been so thrilled with the idea of having Sarah at home, began to lose interest. He started coming home later and later, brushing off her questions with vague excuses about work. The connection they once shared seemed to fray, and Sarah couldn't understand why. The real turning point came when Sarah and Ethan had been married for 2 years, and Sarah still hadn't conceived. Ethan, who had been so eager to start a family, began to grow frustrated. His comments became more pointed, and his disappointment in her seemed to grow with each passing day. "Why isn't this happening, Sarah?" Ethan snapped one evening, after another failed attempt at conception. "We should have had kids by now. Are you even trying?" Sarah could feel the weight of his words crushing her. She had always wanted children, and she was doing everything she could, but it wasn't happening. The pressure from Ethan to get pregnant, combined with his subtle insinuations that she wasn't trying hard enough, made her feel like she was failing him. It wasn't just the issue of children that caused strain in their marriage. Ethan's behavior toward Sarah had become increasingly cold and dismissive. The man who had once praised her for being a perfect wife now found faults in everything she did. If dinner wasn't to his liking, he would roll his eyes. If the house wasn't spotless, he'd make a snide comment. Sarah tried to brush it off at first, telling herself that it was just a rough patch, but deep down, she knew something was terribly wrong. The woman who had once been the pride of his life, the woman he had shown off to his colleagues, was now the target of his criticism. The love they had shared seemed to have disappeared, replaced by an icy indifference. But the true betrayal came not from Sarah, but from Ethan himself. It started subtly, with small signs that Ethan was growing closer to Rebecca, Sarah's best friend. Rebecca had been Sarah's confidant since their college days. And while Sarah had chosen to leave her career behind to focus on her family, Rebecca was still out there, working as a sheriff, chasing criminals, and making a difference. Ethan had always admired Rebecca's independence, but now, he found himself drawn to her for reasons he couldn't even explain. He began to spend more time with Rebecca, initially under the guise of business meetings or casual lunches. But as the days passed, the meetings became more frequent, and their connection deepened. Ethan, who had once admired Sarah's strength, now found himself falling for Rebecca's ambition and confidence. It didn't take long before their affair was impossible to hide. Ethan stopped even pretending to be faithful. He would spend entire weekends with Rebecca, leaving Sarah alone in their penthouse. When Sarah confronted him, hoping for some explanation, Ethan coldly admitted the truth. "I'm seeing Rebecca," he said, without remorse. "You should have seen this coming. She's a real woman, a working woman, someone with ambition, not like you." The words hit Sarah like a slap in the face. She had sacrificed her career, her independence, all for Ethan. And this was her reward: betrayal. Ethan didn't even care to hide it anymore. He flaunted his affair with Rebecca in front of Sarah, making sure she knew just how useless he thought she had become. Devastated, Sarah packed her bags and walked out of the life she had once known. She could have pressed charges for infidelity, but she was too broken, too drained emotionally, to fight. She left Ethan behind, with nothing but the remnants of a broken marriage. But Sarah carried a secret with her. She was pregnant, and Ethan was the father. Yet, she kept this secret close to her heart, never revealing it to him. As Sarah struggled to rebuild her life, Ethan's world began to unravel. Caldwell Technologies, the company he had built from the ground up, was facing severe financial problems. Rumors of embezzlement and fraud began to spread, and soon enough, Ethan was accused of siphoning company funds. The board of directors didn't hesitate to fire him. His reputation was tarnished beyond repair. Ethan found himself jobless, and the life of luxury he had once known was slipping through his fingers. No company would hire him, not with the theft scandal attached to his name. His wealth began to dwindle, and soon, Rebecca, who had only been interested in his status and fortune, began to distance herself. One day, Ethan came home to find Rebecca packing her bags. "I didn't sign up for this," she said coldly, her eyes void of any warmth. "I'm not sticking around to watch you fall apart." And with that, she was gone. Alone and penniless, Ethan wandered the streets of San Francisco, sleeping in shelters and begging for food. The man who had once been at the top of the world was now at the bottom. He had no job, no home, and no friends. His wealth and status had betrayed him, and now, so had Rebecca. Months passed, and his situation only grew worse. It seemed as though Ethan was doomed to live a life of misery and regret. But on a cold afternoon, as he walked aimlessly through the city, he stumbled upon a small cafe. Desperate for something to eat, he entered. And then he saw Herr Sarah. She was sitting at a table, dressed in a sleek business suit, looking more confident than he had ever seen her. The woman who had once been the love of his life now looked like a stranger. She was thriving while he was falling apart. Ethan couldn't bring himself to speak. His pride, shattered into 1,000 pieces, left him silent and broken. Sarah noticed him too. She put down her cup of coffee and walked over to him. "Ethan," she said softly, "it's been a long time." Ethan could barely meet her eyes. "You look good," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've had to be," Sarah replied, with a calmness that shocked him. Life doesn't stop just because things get hard. Tears filled Ethan's eyes as the weight of his failures bore down on him. He wanted to apologize, to beg for her forgiveness, but the words wouldn't come. And then, Sarah said, the one thing that would change everything. "I have a son, Ethan," she said. "His name is Noah. He's 7 years old." The revelation hit Ethan like a tidal wave. He had missed everything: the birth of his son, his first steps, his first words, all because of his own selfishness and insecurities. Sarah didn't offer him sympathy. Instead, she looked at him with quiet strength. "It'll never stop you from seeing him," she said. "But first, you need to get your life together." In that moment, Ethan realized that everything he had ever wanted, wealth, power, admiration, was nothing compared to the family he had abandoned. He had been given a second chance, and for the first time in years, he felt the faintest glimmer of hope. Ethan Osborne's fall from grace had been swift, but his journey toward redemption was just beginning. It would be a long and difficult road, but for the first time, he was willing to fight for it. He had lost everything once, but maybe, just maybe, could regain something far more important: his family.